Welcome everybody to Santa Cruz Works Clinic, Zentrepreneur Life on August 19th. We are also supported by the generosity of our benevolent sponsors. Thank you to each and every one of them for contributing to the success of our wonderful and unique community.
Thanks so much for having me today. This is about an hour talk. I'm going to try and condense down into 20 minutes, but just some opening remarks. First, I want to do a plug for the CEO Works program. That's been just an amazing program that Doug put together. Get to connect with some amazingly talented entrepreneurs trying to become great companies that change the world for the better. So for those that don't know LeBaron or are a C-level person, highly recommend you sign up for that program. LeBaron's unbelievable and the program's just unbelievable. And I tip my cap to you, Doug. Secondly, I've been called a lot of things in my life, that near's not one of them. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but you know, in the spirit of cool stuff and quirky stuff from Santa Cruz, I'm going to take that as a good sign. So at least it's not QAnon or something crazy like that. So let me just sort of kick this talk off on what Doug opened up the conversation with, which was that unfortunately, I don't think we're on a good path. I think most would share that point of view with me. And there's some very easy data-driven ways to evaluate that. And I think at the end of the day, the most important barometer, and I think one of the most important responsibilities that human beings take, becoming the most intelligent, creative, super being on this planet, is to leave more opportunities for future generations to come. I wish I could say that I believe we're on a path to do that. I actually think we're creating more problems than we are solutions. And you can look at it on every measure, certainly starting at the top, existential threat of climate change. This is going to cost future generations trillions of dollars, lost GDP, human displacement. The list goes on and on. It's quite unconscionable that we continue to pump CO2 into our atmosphere and make this situation worse. Our political system's badly broken. It's bought and paid for. We're dealing with social injustices, police brutality. The list just goes on. And the problem with it is that society needs to be rebooted. And many of the paradigms are very antiquated. And the long and the short of it is that they benefit very few. I'm a big believer in capitalism and free markets. I just think there's a better way to do it. I think there's a more inclusive way to do that. I think there's a way where we can create great treasure and great wealth and great opportunities for more people, not fewer people. So the current structures that we have are there for a purpose. They're benefiting very few people. So I believe that the right way forward is through grassroots, organic movement that is all about creating a groundswell. And I'll admit, I think one of the best ways to do that, there are lots of ways, one of the best ways is to inspire entrepreneurship, inspire creative thinking, where new companies will emerge that can actually walk and chew gum. They can serve their employees really well. They can serve their customers really well. They can serve their shareholders really well. They can serve the world really well, and the planet and biodiversity. We can actually do all of that. It's not hard to do. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but let me start out with a video. And before I tee that up, there's sort of a couple things that I want to talk about today. What Zentrepreneur philosophy is all about. It's really the start of a conversation. I want to open source this thinking and this philosophy. It's about 21 principles on that. And how it was really built over the last decade was really looking at the characteristics of great entrepreneurial leaders. What made them great leaders? What are the philosophies and attributes of that? Second component is I've had the opportunity to be teaching entrepreneurship at Stanford University now for 10 years. And seeing how Generation Z thinks about the world, they're a very altruistic generation. They actually care about things outside of their paycheck or material things that they want to acquire in life. And it's been quite refreshing. And I have big, deep belief that Generation Z is the generation that's going to basically shift the path that we're on from unsustainable to sustainable, creating more opportunities for future generations to come. And then lastly, I would use the term modern spirituality. So I'm going to let the video speak to that. And then I'm going to walk you through a thought model and save some time for some Q&A.
Earth, home. For decades, mankind has achieved wonders on this planet. We've terraformed the land, built cities in the desert, and islands out of sand. Yet at the same time, our forests are burning, glaciers melting, and lakes drying up. our lives have been threatened by our very own creation. But we are the next generation. We can change our trajectory and course correct what's been done by past generations to create a better future. Zentrepreneur Life is a philosophy to spark change. It offers a roadmap to tapping into your infinite creative power through the following 21 principles. Believe in something greater than yourself. Live in gratitude. Strive to make the world a better place. Believe in infinite possibilities. Be transparent. Be kind. Give more. Lead by example. Be bright. Share positivity. Have faith that you will succeed no matter the circumstances. Be present. Continually strive for personal growth. Spend time in nature. Listen. Live in pursuit of perfecting your craft.
Ken Watson comeback thing. I think that's Pat.
Have a dedication to defining your own path. Build open networks. Make your own opportunities. Fuel your mind, body, and spirit with healthy nutrients. Know the real prize is the journey. Don't take life too seriously. Laugh, sing, and dance more. Be willing to explore your edges.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Yesterday, we terraformed the land, built cities in the desert, and islands out of sand. Tomorrow, well, we have a better plan.
Real quickly, Doug, you can just pop through this really quick. Doug gave a really great overview of my background. I don't need to do that. Had the opportunity to create my own startup and take that public. It turned out to be worth $3 billion. Had the opportunity to work with Elon, both at Solar City and at Tesla. I've been teaching entrepreneurship now at Stanford for over a decade, also working closely with UCSC and other colleges as part of Get Virtual. And what we're here to talk about today is Zentrepreneur Life. Doug, next slide. So, as I opened up to today's talk, this is what is driving me. This is what really is bothering me, in that I do not believe that we're leaving behind more opportunities for future generations to come. And so the question is, do we sit and sulk and cry or get negative on that, or do we find ways to solve problems? And as I was thinking about really how to solve for that problem, what became really apparent to me is the most important asset that we have is time. Your time is fixed. I don't know when it is, but there's a beginning and a middle and an end. If you smash your car, you can go get your car fixed, or break your iPhone, you can go get a new iPhone, maybe even a newer model. Time is something that you can't get back. So as I sort of enter the back half of my life here, I've been thinking more about my time. Where's my time going? Why am I here? Am I creating more opportunities for future generations to come? And I thought about putting together a mental model that I would love to walk you guys through. And Doug, next slide. So let me share that with you, how I think about my life, how I think about my time, and what's really sort of driving me. And underlying all of that is what I believe is our greatest superpower, and that's creativity. You are born with infinite creativity. Over time, society does a really good job of casting you with labels, conforming you into structures. And those structures, as I outlined at the beginning of my talk, benefit very few people. And it's the power of creativity that is really what separates our species from any other species on this planet. Just look around, look at our life, look at the types of homes that we live in, the automobiles that we drive, the computers that we use, the jets that we fly, and the list goes on and on. That is an extraordinary talent. Unfortunately, over time, as we focus on doing the same thing every day, as society conforms your thinking, your creativity just begins to erode over that time. You allow that to happen. And there's massive science behind that. So I thought about how to continuously harness that super creative power that we all have to create your own opportunities, live life on the edge, and some of those important principles of entrepreneurship. I look at that through sort of a three-dimensional graph. So let's talk about the x-axis, consciousness. No one knows what consciousness is or where it exists. No one knows where your memory is. No one knows what you're thinking about right now. But there's something that doesn't live in space-time. It's that voice inside your head. It's what your heart is telling you. It's that feeling that you get in your gut. It's not something that you see or hear or smell or touch. There's a consciousness in you that knows everything, knows it all. It doesn't live in space-time. If you think back to the earliest memory that you have to where you are today, that consciousness and that being is still there. And connecting with that is one of the most important things that you can do in life. It's what really helps drive creative thinking, problem solving. It's the root of all health. If you're living in constant anxiety and stress and pressure, what that puts on your body in terms of unhealthiness of that, it absolutely shortens your life and reduces your quality of time. And there are unlimited things that we can all do. And I'll bet many of you on this call today focus and connect with your consciousness. Whether it's, for me, nature's a big part of that, or meditation, or yoga, or an affirmation, or whatever ritual that I have. There's so many infinite ways to expand your consciousness. And that's what human life is all about and creativity is all about, which is really expanding. So you don't want to sit still. You certainly don't want to go backwards. What creates a really fulfilling life is expansion of your life. So consciousness is one of the most important areas that I focus my time and my energy on. As I said, there are unlimited ways to connect with your own consciousness. Where it exists is anyone's great guess. The second spectrum here is on the y-axis, and I'll label that wisdom. And what wisdom really is wisdom starts with gathering information. That could be in the books that you read, where you spend your time online, the people that you meet. And as you're gaining information, your body's ability and your mind's ability and conscious ability is to convert that into wisdom, to convert that into patterns of what you see. And for me, I really want to focus my time on this concept of how do I expand my wisdom? And one of the principles of Zentrepreneur Life was this concept of open networks. And most folks, traditionally, they do what I'll call stay in the same swim lane. As a matter of fact, social media does a good job of doing that for you. So Facebook's got an algorithm and knows what you're clicking on or liking. It just continues to serve up that same stuff. LinkedIn, if you've ever tried to go out and connect with people that you don't know, and if enough people click and say they don't know you, you're going to get an error message from LinkedIn saying, hey, don't connect with people you don't know. I actually believe the opposite is true. I think you should be connecting with people you don't know, people with different perspectives, different points of view, different art talents. And that's the opportunity to get out of your swim lane, get out of your echo chamber, and even stuff that may not resonate with you. The opportunity to expand that thinking and that wisdom is a superpower that you have. Why stay in the same swim lane? So for me, it's all about what new ways can I expand my information gathering? How do I turn that into greater wisdom, whether it's becoming a better entrepreneur, a better father, a better grandfather, a better human being, a better artist? The list just goes on and on. But wisdom is such an important part of how I think about where I want to utilize my time. And then finally, the third axis is really what I call action. So this is really about creativity. What am I creating? Am I writing an email? What does that email say about me? What area am I trying to focus on? What am I trying to change in the world? What am I trying to change in my family? What am I trying to change in my house? And where am I dedicating and focusing those actions on? I grew up in an era of the 80s and on the East Coast. That era was really all about greed and materialism. How rich can you get? How many houses can you acquire? What car are you driving? Are you hobnobbing with, all the important people? Quite frankly, that's just all bullshit. That's an enormous, absolute waste of time. And as I've sort of thought about my life and tried to expand from a consciousness and a wisdom standpoint, life's really shifted for me over the last several decades. That's not what life's all about. It's all about making a difference in the world, serving your community, serving humanity. How do we empower future generations and creating more opportunities for them? So I've tried to really focus my actions in that area. Not that I'm perfect, I make mistakes, but by and large, these are all sort of driving principles and a mental model of how I really thought about my life. And again, it's not perfect. Maybe some of this will resonate with you, maybe some of it won't, but I would challenge you to sort of think about that and where are you spending your time? And interestingly enough, a third of your time is spent sleeping, a third of your time is spent at work, and then that leaves a third of time. If you look at how you're parsing your time today, how much of that just wasted cycling through social media or doing the same thing day in and day out? And I try and focus my energy and creativity on what new thing am I going to do this week? Even if I don't like it, I'm learning something. Even if I don't become proficient at that, I'm expanding and I'm learning something. How do I serve my community better? You'll hear a little bit about during a future Santa Cruz Works session called Get Virtual. I think that's a good example of thinking through how do we solve some of the problems with keeping local businesses thriving in a tough COVID period, while at the same time inspiring more college students to learn about entrepreneurial thinking, creative thinking. So a little mental model for you to think about. Doug, next slide, please. So real quickly, this is about another 30-minute slide, but how this relates to science. So your brain typically falls into one of 5 sort of brain patterns. At the bottom there is delta waves. That's during deep sleep and while you're not dreaming. Theta waves, alpha, beta, and gamma. Where most of us spend their time, unfortunately, is in beta. And as you can see, it's a very choppy, brave wavelength. And what's happening here is that you're trying to do a million things. You have a lot on your mind. You're trying to solve too many problems. You don't have time in your day. You're stressing out over this or that. And you're trying to live in a world that's incredibly noisy, continuously throwing noise factor at you, competing for your time, robbing you of your consciousness and your center of gravity. This is where the world spends most of its time. It's impossible to be creative when your brain is operating at a beta phase. You're just literally trying to survive. You're literally just trying to hold on. And that is where most of us spend our time, unfortunately, taking the kids to school or dealing with an innumerable amount of activities and tasks that are running through your brain and thoughts that are running through your brain. As a matter of fact, I've just recently read a study where only 2.5% of all human beings can actually multitask. So you think you're multitasking, but only 2.5% of us can. And even those that can multitask, at most, you can maybe manage 2 or 3 tasks at that time. And just think about what you're thinking about and the enormity of all of that you're trying to jam through your brain. And that brainwave activity in that beta phase is oscillating at that which deprives you of your creative thinking, deprives you of your center of gravity, and all the great opportunities that you could be thinking about and focusing your time or energy. The 2 most important areas of how to get your brain into the most productive states are alpha and gamma. Alpha is a very slow, methodical time to recenter yourself. And this is a lot of where great creative thinking can originate, in the shower, where you're not at your computer, you're not anywhere else, and your brain starts to slow down. It opens itself up to infinite possibilities, new types of thinking, maybe someone that you met, or a paragraph, or a quote that really resonated with you. All those distractions melt away. I want to spend more time in it. And for me, I always make sure that I take at least 2 or 3 walks, even if it's down around the neighborhood, clear myself, get away from my computer, get away from my 3rd cup of coffee. And the most productive brain waves of all, this is the gamma state, often also called flow state. I'm sure you've all been there. We're actually at this really calm state, but your brain is operating at this very high oscillation rate. You're actually in a very comfortable state. It's a very healthy state for your body, where your cells can connect and epigenetics and drive just a really healthy state of mind. For me, I know that certainly surfing is one of the things that absolutely gets me into a gamma state. I don't take my phone out there. I don't take my computer out there. There's nothing out there. There's no homes out there. There's just the rhythm of the ocean, the waves and the energy and nature and the universe connecting with me. And when I'm able to catch a wave It's the most beautiful gamma wave state that I'm in, which is there's nothing else in my mind except this deep feeling of oneness, this deep feeling with nature. But I'm helping people. Gamma waves also occupy my mind. It's full with love. It's full of nourishment. Those are the states that you want to focus your time and energy on, which allows this creative spirit to explode, allows you to be more productive, allows you to be a better human citizen for society. They get shifted onto a much more productive, much more sustainable path. So longer stuff on this. There's a lot more science behind this, but I thought it was germane to our conversation today. All right, Doug, next slide. So that's what really Zentrepreneur Life is all about. So there's a lot of science behind that. I'm going to actually talk about one other science factor to that, which is related to brainwave activity, which is neuroplasticity. This is basically how expansive your neural network is. So you have billions and billions of neurons and synapses in your brain. And over time, as you conform and what I call become a zombie, you start doing the same things. And those electrical chemical signals in your brain, it's like creating a groove. They just get deeper and deeper when you start to do the same things. And like anything in life, if you don't use it, you lose it. So it's why, you know, I have a 2.5-year-old grandson, and every time I have the opportunity to be with him and I look into his eyes, I don't see boundaries. I don't see borders. The stuff that comes out of his mouth is so amazing. The creativity is at an all-time high. His neuroplasticity is exploding in his brain. And then over time, as you go through life and go through society, you start to conform and use less and less of that power. And there's actually science behind this, but by the time you are 55, you've lost about 50% of your neuroplasticity. And Zentrepreneur Life is all about staying connected with that, staying connected with creativity, staying connected with your consciousness, and not losing sight of the opportunity that you have on this planet, which is quite short, and thinking about the kind of legacy that you want to leave behind. Doug, next slide. So, wrapping up here, as I looked at these 21 principles, some may say there's too many, some may say not enough. And again, it's really designed to be a start of a conversation. I don't own it. Doug doesn't own it. You don't own it. We all own it. And hopefully, the start of a conversation, it can expand, it can contract, it can morph, it can go to a path that focuses on how do we retain our creative power, how do we create more opportunities for future generations to come, and how do you really focus on leaving the kind of legacy that you want to leave behind? Because you don't leave with your car, you don't leave with your money, you don't leave with your bank account or your house, you just leave with your character. You leave, the footprint that you leave behind is what difference did you make in the world? So for me, one of the most important principles of Zentrepreneur Life is all about defining your own path. And that's why I love entrepreneurship. And if you've ever talked to someone about an idea and they've told you that you're crazy, you know you're on the right path. And a matter of fact, Apple Computer, when they were competing, when the Macintosh first came out and they were competing against IBM, one of the quotes in an ad that Steve Jobs was famous for, which was, it's the crazy people that actually think they can change the world that actually do. And that's all about defining your own path. I don't want to follow someone else's path. I want to learn, but I want to take that in and make that special and unique for me, because all human beings are unique. So I would encourage you all to define your own path, create your own opportunities. Doug, second piece. Second takeaway for me is that although I have goals, I'm definitely a type A person for those that know me, but milestones are great, but they are just, markers along the way. And the real prize is the journey. It's the experiences that we have. It's taking a risk. It's creating your own path. It's meeting new people. It's reading something really interesting. It's giving back to your community. That's where the magic comes from. That's where your soul gets refreshed. That's where your heart and love and gratitude really comes from, which is really embracing the journey. And I'll be the first to admit that sometimes that journey is painful. Some of us go through some really difficult times and some really challenging moments. That to me represents opportunity, because it's during the tough times that define your character. Do you fold like a house of cards? Do you blame other people? Do you become really negative? Or do you find a way to rise through that? Do you find a way to embrace that journey? And one of the lessons here for me was that I've always been a get it done yesterday kind of guy. And I have always tried to find ways to just circumvent the process. I've learned to just embrace the process. And as Anchorman would say, just breathe it in. I let that process become part of me. I let that process play its course and play its nature, because there's only so much that I can control in my life. And I try and focus on those things that I can't control. And what lessons is the universe trying to teach me? Am I on the right path? Am I focused in the right area? But the real prize is really a journey for me. And lastly, the third big takeaway for me was this concept of exploring your edges. And as I've gone through some also challenging times in my life, my daughter bought me this amazing book. So Osho was a prolific Indian guru. And there's been many books that have transcribed some of his amazing talks. One of those was about fear. And when I read that book, it was an amazing book. It was an eye-opening book. But the thing that really resonated with me most was there's been studies of when folks are on their deathbed, that transition in life is difficult because they have regrets. And they talk about, God, I regret this or I regret that. That makes that transition from whatever exists beyond human existence a really painful, difficult, scary thing. And to the extent that you can push yourself, push your boundaries, live on the edge, and have no regrets, then you live life fully. You're putting yourself out there. Failure is not failure. Failure is really an opportunity to learn. And this concept of, and Osho even talks about at times putting your life in danger. I've certainly done that with some of the waves that I've surfed in and some of the other crazy things that I've absolutely done in my life. Now, this is not to say that I haven't made mistakes. I've made a ton. I'm going to continue to make mistakes because I'm human. This is not to say that I wouldn't do things differently, because of course I would. But I really don't have any regrets. And every day I wake up like, what new edge can I push through? Am I pushing my boundaries? Am I pushing my edges? Am I getting myself out there? Because that's where life gets really interesting. That's where your soul really connects. That's where the energy from your soul and love and compassion and gratitude all comes from, which is pushing that boundary, adopting that life, the prizes, the journey, and really defining your own path. So let me leave you with one final thought. Coming up here, I'm probably going longer than I'm supposed to, but the last slide here, Doug, is that this concept of flow. And if anyone out there, and I'm going to ask you to use your honor system, if anyone got all the questions right, let me know, because I'm going to send a prize to you. It's called The Tao Te Ching. This is a book that a friend gave me. It changed my life. It's an amazing book. And the big takeaway from that was that you can continue to swim against the current. You're not going to go anywhere. You're going to get tired. You might drown. Pushing a big rock up a hill is really hard. You don't get too far. But if you think about the times in your life when you've connected or found that flow, it's always there. You just have to be creative with that. And I've tried to focus my energy on, where is that flow? How do I connect with that? How do I connect with that current? How do I connect with that wave going downstream? So would encourage you all, find your flow, connect with it. Doug, Santa Cruz community, thank you so much for this opportunity and time. And I'll take some questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Toby. For the audience there, please put your questions into Q&A. Nice. One of the questions that came up, there's actually two that came up right away. One is, are there any lessons that you've learned from Elon that you'd like to share? And are there any lessons that you've learned from failure that you've turned around into something personally that has made you successful?
Yeah, so great question. Actually, some of the principles in Zentrepreneur Life are things I've learned from Elon. And that's this concept of pushing your boundary, pushing your edge, and not really having any boundaries. And one of the greatest stories that Elon was, he talks about like performance reviews. And in his mind, and I'll quote Elon, excellence is a passing grade, right? So excellence is a C in his book. So he's an incredibly difficult taskmaster. He pushes you to do things you never thought that you can do, but that's what we're capable of. And we allow the ego and the mind to hold you back. I can't do this. I don't know how to do that. When he was creating SpaceX, he initially thought it would be cheaper just to buy rockets. And he did some research and found that Russia had the cheapest rockets. And he had like 3 rocket scientists on a plane with him, flying out there. And they looked at it, and on the way back, he started looking at this and said, "This $60 million, this is ridiculous. Like, I can't fly. My business won't succeed if I got to spend $60 million on a rocket." So he wasn't a rocket scientist, and he actually created the entire math on an Excel spreadsheet about the propulsion that that rocket would have to do. And then the other big important learning lesson from Elon, there are so many of them, but this concept called first principles, which is as you look at a problem or you look at something that you want to achieve and you break it down into its lowest common denominator, down to its first principles. And he did that as he looked at and broke down like, well, what parts go into a rocket? How much do these parts cost? And what he found was that he could actually build a rocket for $6 million instead of at the time with the cheapest rocket, which was $60 million. And I remember one time when he's also been a maniacal focus on creating an amazing customer experience. There wasn't a day that went by where I didn't get a forwarded tweet or a voicemail or an email from him about, look into this problem, fix this problem, let me know what's going on here. So he stayed, as large as Tesla got, he meets with everyone, you know, at all different various levels of the company. He doesn't sit in the glass office. He's down in the manufacturing line. He's meeting with a product manager. He's meeting with an engineer. He's spanning the globe on everything from the Boring Company to SpaceX to what he's doing at Tesla. Tesla, both a transportation company and an energy company. And it's just amazing to see him. And I know that I certainly have nowhere near that kind of intellectual capability and the ability to work 100 hours a week. But what he does do is it set an environment up for producing extraordinary results and getting the most out of you. And never being satisfied with the status quo. It's like it's never good enough. So it was an amazing journey. It was an amazing time to work there. And as you probably can look through the 21 principles that I outlined, there's probably 3 or 4 that embody some of the great characteristics of entrepreneurship that I think no one's better than Elon probably in the last 100 years at. God, failures, there have been so many. I'll just give you one small one. You know, when I started putting Zentrepreneur Life together, I was thinking about, well, how do we go out and inspire a movement and kind of start this conversation? And initially, I thought the way to do that was by creating a symposium series. So UC Santa Cruz allowed me to put one of those together, and it was 4 great speakers. But I wanted a program that could expand to the world, that could expand entrepreneurial thinking at any college or university that wanted to do that. As I got through that, I found I've got a really large network and I'm pretty well connected in Silicon Valley. But speakers or individuals that I would want to launch these programs at other colleges, they didn't have the networks to do that. That was a failure. Another failure here in Santa Cruz called Tool. What I was trying to do was reinvent customer experience, because most customer experiences are bad. They are literally get on the phone, go through a menu tree. How many times have you called Xfinity and found that the most disgusting experience ever, or send an email in? And I thought, why can't you just text a company, any company, from one mobile app? Turns out I should have taken my own course at Stanford and learned some of the principles there, because we ended up building a technology. We didn't have the right people there. We ultimately ended up failing. And I hate to use it as failure. It was really more a learning experience. And part of that goes to, for those in an early stage company, or even a medium or large company, people are everything. CEO leadership is critical. And more importantly, the name of the game is to get the right people on the bus and get them in the right seat. And when you do that, when there's a consistent vision, there's a strategy that everybody understands, the right people are on the bus and in the right seat, there's nothing you can't accomplish.
That's great. Thank you. We have 2 questions from Dagmar. One is, you mentioned a book prior to the Tao. I can't remember if it was
Tao Te Ching?
Yeah, before that. There was a book that you mentioned before, then she wanted to know what was the, what was it?
Let's see here. Well, I'm not sure which one, but the other one that, again, a friend gave me that I highly recommend. Here you go. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
There you go. I've got great business books as well. You know, I'm actually rereading Ram Dass's book, Be Here Now. I'm a huge fan of lots of, you know, really fantastic thinking from the late Terence McKenna, and there are others. If anyone wants to email me, I'll throw my, you can email me at Toby.Corey tobycorey@gmail.com. I'm happy to share any of my reading lists or recommendations with you. But as you can tell, kind of thinking about modern spirituality, there's some fantastic books out there, some fantastic other philosophers and quantum mechanics scientists, and the world is filled with so much knowledge and talent.
Was the book Osho?
Okay. Oh, yes, that's it. So it's Osho. It's called Fear by Osho.
Perfect. Thank you. Dagmar also says, let's see, in times like these, it seems to be even harder to find your flow. For many, flow seems like a luxury when their life is about survival, both for business and personally. What advice do you have to keep looking for your path and the journey in tough times like these, when you are distracted by often more mundane things?
Yep. So I'll get a little personal with this group here. And I'm still going through, a significant health issue with a loved, close family member. And that journey's been challenging. And I would say that, it could be easy to just let it consume me. Let some of the pain and everything that I'm going through to do that and to retract in. And I just decided to push through that. I'd be lying to you if I said there aren't hard days or that some days are more challenging than others. But I think that the way forward is that, first and foremost is I do believe in something beyond this human existence. And I think the best way that I can be of help during that time is to be strong and to figure out how to do that. And for me, that's been pushing that envelope. Actually, instead of doing less, it's doing more. How can I give to my community? How can I give to the world? An area I'm so passionate about, which is college students. And, there's certainly stressful times. What if, Affordable Care Act goes away and there's no protection for pre-existing conditions? There's lots of things to worry about. I know many of you are going through, existential issues around business and revenue. And as difficult and as challenging it is, and I don't claim to be walking in those shoes, we're all walking in unique shoes with different types of challenges that are affecting us. And I think that the way forward is to figure out, how do I get this energy and this momentum going forward? Some of that is spending that time, and you may think it's unproductive, but to think through. It might be a massive pivot in your business. It might be a new business. It might be new ways to think about how to solve a problem. For me, as problems arise, I look at them from 3 different angles. 1, can I get through it? And what are some creative ways that I could possibly get through that problem? Or 2, I say, okay, if I can't get through it, can I get around it? Maybe a pivot is the right way to do that. And kind of getting out of this narrow set, like my business is under significant pressure right now, that's consuming all of your time. You've got to spend some time to step outside of that, because that's just consuming you. That's the ego. That's pulling you down. And to step back a little bit from that and think about, can I go through the problem? Can I go around the problem? Or can I say this isn't a problem at all? And I think that, spending and thinking about that as well with what happened when I was thinking about Zentrepreneur Life is during a dark time of both dealing with this health issue from this family member, combined with a pandemic. When COVID hit, and it was that time where I guess the universe spoke to me, and where this concept of Get Virtual came to me, where why don't we create a college course and students can work directly with local businesses and help get them online, help get them virtual. We're still in the early stages. We're not perfect, but that has been such a buoy for me and such a new opportunity that's helped me be a better person, to help this other individual through this health crisis that they're going through, helping me to be a better person. And I think that you've got to, despite that difficulty and like, how am I going to pay my bills tomorrow? Getting wound up in that is always going to be the worst thing. That and panic are going to be the worst. So it's having to step back, expanding, talking to other people, creative problem solving, and looking at this from lots of different angles, not just one like, hey, how am I going to pay my rent next month? So hopefully that's helpful. Drop me an email, maybe we can talk more about that.
Thank you. Brendan has a question. You mentioned a paradigm shift decades ago about the internet. What, if any, paradigm shifts are we witnessing, but may not be fully seen right now, realizing?
Yeah. So there are so many that, you know, I think are going to originate off the internet. So go back and think about like the printing press, right? Like what an amazing innovation that was, and the benefit to society for that. But as I sit here today, honestly, I can't think of, there's so many opportunities that, you know, I'm in a beta phase moment right now, but energy is one perfect example. Certainly AI in robotics. One of the areas that I'm really excited about is this whole movement in venture capital funding behind these platforms called no code or low code. And that to me represents just an awesome opportunity where you don't have to be a coder. You don't have to be a subset of the human population to be able to figure out how to create a great business that's easy, that's cost effective, low capital intensive, get me in market early. That's this Get Virtual program that I talked about. That's what's allowed us to do the work that we do. It's these no-code tools like Wix and Squarespace that allow us to build great websites for small businesses here in Santa Cruz or in Monterey. We're expanding out to San Jose and to Washington and to Connecticut and all of the universities and Shopify. So there literally are so many opportunities. Health tech is an exploding area. Reinventing the grid, which today is just generating and pushing. It's a dumb infrastructure right now. Been working with a company that's building an AI trading asset that allows for new distributed energy resources to enter the grid, like storage and hydro and others that move us to a much more sustainable path. So look, I would just say, think about what you're excited about, passionate about, start looking into that area. But honestly, I can't think of an area that isn't right for innovation, isn't right for disruption or new opportunities. We're in a very despite our challenges, we're in a golden era right now.
Well, thank you so much for those questions from the audience, and Toby for your response. We are at the end of our hour here, and again, if you want to reach out to Toby, he's offered his email address, that's toby.corey, toby.corey@gmail.com. And we thank you so much, Toby, for everything that you give to our community and to our world.